Good morning. This is Talking Devils, your favourite Manchester United podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Barton, joined as always by the Manchester United legend, Paul Parker, to talk over, a week at United, but one where we can talk about two wins for once, Paul. Paul, how are you doing? You all right?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you, Wayne. Yeah, very good.
Good stuff. If you're watching, please like and subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, that is, feel free to get your questions in as well if you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. If you're listening back on the audio platform, please be sure to subscribe and review on the platform you listen on. If you're watching the replay, hello, and do feel free to comment because we still do reply. Other stuff to check out on the channel. We had some video, some matchday footage sent to us by unique_treble on Twitter. Matchday footage yesterday of Ellen Road, and the atmosphere is on the channel is it was a pretty lively one in the away end, as you would expect that it would be going to Leeds. We'll talk about that in a moment, but first of all, Paul, we've got to talk about Brighton. 2-0 win in the end. Ronaldo scoring a great goal. Fernandes scoring right at the end. But it was a very, very weird one. It was one where we called in the podcast we did last week. We were talking about Brighton and how they were going to come to Old Trafford and boss the ball, and they did that. They were very unafraid. They controlled much of the play for the opening period. United didn't create a lot. I mean, the best of their play always, as it seems to be at the moment, coming through Sancho when he was on the left, and then just when you're sort of wondering what kind of response you're going to get from United, they do. I mean, it was provided early in the second half because Ronaldo scored and a great goal as well. And then you've got this sort of, it's like a conflict, isn't it, really? Because he scored this great goal. United have got the ascendancy, and you're kind of wondering, all right, do we kick on now? Are we going to control this game? Are we going to do the things that everyone has been thinking we're going to do? And then they get the man sent off. And obviously, fine, they've had the man sent off, whatever or not, it looked a little bit debatable. But, I mean, it's one of those, you take the challenge, you take your chance, and basically that's, would a Langer have scored? I'm not sure, but it was by the by, he gets sent off. United then, if you think they're going to control the game, they kind of do for about 5 minutes, and then Brighton got comfortable again. They were really comfortable, and by the end part of it, they were controlling it. They had United panicked as if they were going to score an equaliser. United's second goal only basically comes because they've got everyone forward, and Fernandes can run. He's got the freedom of their half to run and score. It's one of those things, Paul, because we won 2-0 and because it was a difficult opponent and because the decisive moment basically came when we were 11 against 11. I'm trying to look at it more positively, but I mean, it is a very difficult game to draw conclusions from positively when you've won 2-0, but they've had a man sent off and they've still managed to control a lot of the ball. I mean, the final possession stat was 50-50 and they played 40 minutes with 10 men, which is it's a little bit of a concern. But yeah, I mean, at least we won, right?
Yeah, I think it's not the right thing to be saying when you talk about Manchester United, but you have to look at it in this moment in time. It is just about taking a win, to be perfectly honest. And like you, even with 10, they had 10 men, Brighton, you would expect a good side to dominate and control it. And then you accept it when you're 10 men, and that's your excuse, the reason why you can't be as good as you were before, because you're one man less. But Manchester United didn't really grab hold of the game as much as they should have done. They tried to, but at the moment, it's not in the DNA of Manchester United to dominate the ball. They just haven't got the personnel who play in that fashion. But then we look at the other side, we do ask sometimes what fashion they are meant to play, because you just don't know what they're going to come up with next. And I looked at Brighton, and Brighton were everything, as you said, what we thought they were going to be. And the biggest problem for Brighton is always in that final third. And that's what cost them, really, in that sense. They didn't really do enough. David De Gea again made an important save.
What a save that was.
It was a great save. I mean, it was a great header, but followed by an even better save. So you have to say, in certain ways, that United were quite fortunate there. Unfortunately, they got a goalkeeper, a goalkeeper performance is maybe the best in the division at this moment in time, just by what he's done for Manchester United. So that game there, they come out of it, they won 2-0. And as far as I'm concerned, a side that compete with all the top sides in the division. But but you're always looking back on it, and you're always saying to yourself, "Still wasn't right. It still wasn't right. They won the game, but it wasn't right, Wayne."
No, 5 minutes before half time, and I think it was literally just after that save. And obviously, Brighton have been in the ascendancy. There were boos around the ground, and obviously, these boos are aimed at the players. You can't say that they're not going to. The Old Trafford crowd are not going to turn their back on the manager straight away. So, what did you make of that? I mean, were you ever booed when you were at United? I don't think you were. I can't remember a time in that period.
It's been a long time since I played. So I'm going to come out and say, I've got to say, I can't remember that ever happening. To be honest, in that way. But I think it doesn't happen when it's like as random. And I was lucky in a time where things were very, very good most of the time. But I think it's just been built up on performances and results. And I think now the fans have starting to realise that Manchester United are not just about winning games. Performances are important. People pay money, and you pay money to watch football, but you've got to remember now in today's world, you're paying money as well to be entertained, Wayne. And Manchester United haven't really been entertaining in that sense. Yesterday was good in the sense of there was away from home, and it was, as it was said, and I heard it being shouted, it was Leeds Cup final.
Yeah.
It was
let's talk about that then very quickly. Let's go on to that. We got a comment in from Dan, who was at the game yesterday. He says, "Morning, chaps. Hope everyone's well. I was at the game. Absolutely superb result. Best away atmosphere for years. Felt the conditions were really tough, so it was hard to gain control." I mean, that's an understatement, right? I mean, he also asks what you make of the fullback performances. Before we talk about the game, let's talk about the fullbacks. I've never been a fullback. I don't know, Paul. My assessment of was Shaw had a difficult time. I didn't think he was brilliant, but Wan-Bissaka seemed to love it. It seemed to be a game made for him, and he got pretty much everything right with the tackles. He did, even accounting for how difficult the circumstances were. So before we actually talk about the game, talk about the fullbacks. What did you make of that?
Well, to be honest, if the interim manager, coach, consultant plan was to play Wan-Bissaka, because the reason why he wanted a good defender on that pitch, because he thought maybe he suddenly thought that Rafinha was going to play. I don't know, play on that side. But whatever it was a really good decision, because he got on that right side of defence were maybe the two best players for Manchester United. I thought Lindelof was excellent.
Yeah.
With and without the ball, he's defending. He is so assured. And I don't know, maybe more I was looking at, because I'm looking at him up against Harry Maguire, and all of a sudden I was seeing more about him and the way he played, his composure. The two runs he made out of defence, one that led to the goal and the one in the second half. And everyone talks about Harry Maguire being good on the ball. And I look at Lindelof and he's better because he's composed. He doesn't panic. As Harry Maguire runs and panics. And it's a rash decision every time he passes it when he's with the ball at his feet. But Lindelof was excellent. But Wan-Bissaka, I thought defensively, he'd done everything you'd expect in those circumstances. I should say no circumstances, but for Man United, there's only one time that happens, when they go to Ellen Road. And it was really difficult. And you've got to remember as well, he hasn't played for a long, long time. So, you talk about before that game, he's mostly on a low ebb. He's just come up, man. Things have changed for him, where he was playing regularly. He was still being berated by people, but he's playing regularly. All of a sudden, bang, he's gone. He's out of the picture, sitting on the bench. He's called up for United's biggest game for quite a while, in the sense of everyone knows that is Leeds. They've waited so many years to play that game in front of fans. And I'll tell you what, he dealt with it really, really well. I can't remember too many mistakes he made, Wayne, if any. But even then, when he did do his bits going forward, it was in the right fashion. You don't have to assist and score goals to be a top-class fullback. You can actually be what's written on the can, a defender.
Yeah. No, he was. I mean, it was easy to see the comparison, if Dalot had played, you would have been concerned about.
There would have been problems, Wayne. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, that both their goals came from the left, but I don't think you could blame Wan-Bissaka for them. The first one was obviously a freak. Let's talk about it. I mean, Dan said about it was best away atmosphere, and the atmosphere looked pretty great. To be honest, you're never going to get anything different with United fans. And you mentioned it earlier, a lot of entertainment, not necessarily down to the way that United were, how good that United were, but nevertheless, I mean, they still managed to come away with controlling the game more than what Leeds were able to, and they were able to score the 4 goals. Well, how did you view that? I mean, it was a crazy game to play in. Is it one of those where you just look at it, you look at how frenetic it is? I mean, first of all, the atmosphere, because a lot of those players wouldn't have been used to that kind of weird atmosphere. And then you've got the conditions, the wind, the rain, being as it was. And let's not understate it, it was storm conditions, actual stormy conditions. So they did well to come through that. You could see the players were drenched after like 5 minutes. It's one of those where perhaps we look at it and praise the attitude of them, Paul. I mean, that's something that's been questioned a lot. So I want to talk about a couple of players individually a little bit later on, Fernandes being one and Maguire probably another. But how did you what did you reckon to the overall... what did you make of it? Because it was such a mess like yesterday. What did you take away from it?
There was definitely a little bit more. It showed more. There was more commitment, I think, in certain ways, but it had to be, because if it wasn't commitment in those conditions, Christ, they would have struggled. And it showed that in the second half, really, that it wasn't the same commitment in the first half. From the first half to the second half. That's why they conceded 2 goals in such a short space of time, because too many of them believed the job was done, and that tells you the difference in this team compared to great Manchester United teams. That wouldn't have happened. But it was just watching football back from the 80s and 90s, or where just the pitch. I mean, in theory, when you look at it, that pitch was quite dangerous. The ball was sticking, been going about it. But the referee and everyone knew that game couldn't have been stopped. If that rain, it couldn't have stopped the game, because it could have caused incredible problems if it did. But I really did believe, and I haven't said this season, but I thought the referee refereed that game really well.
Yeah, he did.
The way he didn't want to give people yellow cards. Players were pushing for people to get yellow cards, which is another big problem that goes on in football now. The players of today, rather than getting with their jobs, but he wasn't having it. He turned around and he was just saying no, and he left it as long as he could, and then it come to the point where all of a sudden, just bang, it happened, and it had to happen. I think everything was justified in what he'd done in that sense, but it wasn't a nasty game. It wasn't that kind of volatile game. It was just such the second half was an excellent half to co-com on in my part. I really enjoyed the second half because of what was going on, and I think that was made up in the fact of Leeds getting themselves back into the game. But then what they've done though is all of a sudden, and I turned around and said it's important if there's a goal scored, United score that next goal. So I said, I just believe it. If Leeds had scored it, wow, they would have had like 25,000. United would have been up against 25,000 fans on the pitch, because they mostly wouldn't have come back from it because of the characters of a lot of the players. So it was that important that they got through that in the end. And again, it was United has got a lot of goals off of ridiculous football by teams that have been, the 2 goals that, when you look at Brighton, you look at the goal and you look at the sending off, that was ridiculous what Brighton were trying to do. Yeah. Where people are trying to play football from because they feel they have to, rather than sometimes you're away from home and being ugly. But United got a lot of, Leeds overplaying, and it got them in front. But getting themselves in front, back again, killed Leeds. Because they worked so hard. They had the fans behind them. 2-2, they were bang, bang, bang. And that goal coming when it did, and the way it was given, killed Leeds. Then there was no way back from after they scored that 3rd goal.
Yeah. The third one in particular, because it was a consequence of the changes that Rangnick made. I thought Pogba played quite well, really well. In fact, I thought Pogba played really well, um, and he created a couple of big chances in the first half. It looked like the most influential player in the first half. And then the second maybe dropped off a little bit. And like I said, I keep saying that we'll talk about Fernandes in a moment, and we will. But perhaps United's problem in that middle area is that in Fernandes and in Pogba, they've got players who like to gamble with, taking speculative passes, which is great if you want a creator. But then when you've got a player like McTominay, who's not, I mean, I thought McTominay was good yesterday, but I want to talk about the three as a trio. They're not a three that are going to keep the ball for you. They're not going to dictate the passage of the play. They're going to do what
To
they
be
do.
honest, Wayne, they are free individuals when they play.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And even if you had Pogba and Fernandes together, they're still going to be two very individual players looking to do their own thing. They're not working as a partnership in the same way that you always saw Button Skulls or Keane and Skulls or even Robson and Ince, the way that they would dovetail and sort of plan for each other's runs. These players don't do that. They're very much about their own games, which is it's got pluses and minuses. Yesterday, very erratic, but the point is that Rangnick made the change. He made the change. It was pretty bold to bring Fred on, and the idea was the ball's moving around a lot. You have a player to move around and receive the ball, and that's basically how the goal came about, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at it as well, I'm sitting there and you watch United, you're watching and you're looking at McTominay, who has got no flexibility, no agility, not agile, and he runs as tall as he is.
Yeah.
If you know what I'm saying, he's very
Yeah.
upright, very slow, no change of pace. Pogba's very much the same as well in that sense. So when it comes to Leeds, and Leeds were just bursting through that midfield far too easily. The other midfield player who's playing his own little game in his head all the time because it's all about him. But as you say, we're going to talk about him late in a little while. And I just thought myself, and then when I saw Fred coming on, I'd have thought, and I believe he should have gone with McTominay. Everything said, one is that as far as I'm concerned, he's all right. And if you want to talk about someone because they pack the badge all the time, and if that's about playing for Manchester United, then United aren't in a good place. But you bring on Fred because he's competitive and he's quick across the floor. So quick. He gets across to people, and yes, he makes mistakes. Yes, he gives the ball away. But I'll tell you what, one thing he doesn't do, Wayne, he doesn't go missing. He doesn't hide. He goes and looks at the ball all the time. When he makes a mistake, he will go back and try and rectify it by going to get the ball back again quickly and trying to do something positive for himself to get that going again. And that's what I like about him. Well, when I look at the other side of it, Scott McTominay doesn't touch the ball as many times as Fred does.
Yeah.
He picks and chooses when he wants the ball in areas where he thinks he's safe. But Fred come on and made a difference because he was quick with his feet. The fact of him coming on and scoring a goal like he did was something which people didn't think about. But when he hasn't got a lot to think about and he reacts to things. I mean, you look at how when Elanga gets that ball, as soon as that ball's going to Elanga, he's jogging. And then all of a sudden that ball goes to Elanga's feet and he overlaps him inside the opposing box, which not many midfield players, when we talk about top class midfield players, wouldn't have thought about doing that. They would have left someone 1-on-1. Go on, go and score. But he made that difference and it allowed Elanga to use him or not use him. And the fact that he used him because his line was blocked. And that's the reason why Fred made the difference on that fact. He changed it, added extra energy. And anybody, I believe, who's a big football fan, who sees honest people, because honest people can still make mistakes.
Yeah.
And Fred's willing to do that. He doesn't go missing, as I said before. He doesn't shirk responsibility. He got that goal because everything about him. And you look at all his good bits. All his good bits for Manchester United have been quite important. Yeah. And that was so important for And United come away from that game, winning that game 4-2. We saw the game as it was and how tight it was, but it was important for the fact of every Manchester United fan who knows how big that game is for United to walk away from that game with something in the bag.
Yeah. So let's get on to Fernandes. So he scored the second goal in the first half. When Leeds scored their equaliser, he was sort of moaning about a foul, which didn't look like a foul, but he was down really gesticulating about it. The assist for the fourth goal was outrageous. But there's a thing growing about him, Paul, that he sometimes there's a lot of petulance. We've talked about it in recent weeks, and a lot of people might say you look at yesterday's performance and you take the petulance and everything because he's contributed in such a big way. And yeah, obviously United aren't that blessed for talent that they are having to rely on him, but it's not the same as when people used to say about Keane and Rooney or even Cantona that they've got a fire in them and you don't want to put it out because you risk extinguishing all the instinctive brilliance that they've got, particularly Rooney and Cantona. It's not the same with Fernandes, is it? It's more petulant than that. He slows the game down. It's like a personal vendetta that he's having with everyone around him all the time. It's not, it's like you said, sometimes, and yes, look, he obviously really cares about playing for United, and his importance to how United are winning games and stuff like that is very much clear to see. But he does very much seem like he's playing his own game, and he's against everyone else. And you'd think like maybe someone ought to be having a word and saying, "Look, you'd probably be better if you're not doing all this stuff."
Yeah, I'm just not enjoying watching him, to be perfectly honest. He's starting to grate on me to watch him in what he does. I try watching when things are going well and think, okay, but that thing in the back of my mind just say, I just can't like him and the way he conducts himself. It's just not good. I just don't really get where he's going. You talk about Rooney, Keane, and Eric. When someone kicked them, whatever, yes, we can talk about Eric. We can talk about all of them. There's been those moments when they've gone for it, but they were generally serious moments of things that weren't nice.
Yeah.
But we're seeing him petty things, and he's in referees. And I'm sitting there, I'm doing this, I'm watching games, I'm looking at the ref, watching the referee, and I think to myself, if he was on the street, would you allow someone to talk to you like that? The manner in which he keeps doing it. What would you do normally on the street? You punch him. You do something. The referee, I say, give him a yellow card. Don't do it. But he needs something. He needs a yellow card. He might need to be sent off for doing what he does. And and I see why this is the biggest club he's played for ever in his career so far. With that ability, he's wasted a lot of years, and it's because of his own talking. Just the whole way the way he works is the fact of he's like a kid, the best player in school, who's been tackled by somebody and he can't deal with it. It's a tantrum on the floor. I'm taking my ball home. You can be tackled. You are a very, very good footballer. But when you get tackled, it's not always a foul. But if it is a foul and that man in black doesn't give it, then you've got to run back, win the ball back, and then go and speak to him and ask him the question. But don't lie on the floor, because that happened against Wolves, didn't it? It
happens every game. It happens every game. He goes down. There is at least one occasion every game he goes down, holding himself, and you're thinking, is he seriously injured? And I know, like, maybe, he's happened that often that it's the boy who cried wolf, but every single time he goes down with all this sincerity, oh my God, I'm really hurt. And then for a second, you're like thinking, oh my God, is he really hurt? And then he just gets up and carries on, and it's embarrassing.
It is embarrassing, but like yourself, Wayne, you're a massive United fan, and everyone is watching all his games. Every time he goes down, I think now there's a vast majority who switch off and watch what's going on. They go there. Everyone just goes, okay, we've been there before. It's the boys crying wolf, and it's going to happen soon. It will happen, but he's going to get seriously injured, and people are going to feel bad after because they never took it seriously.
Mm.
And it should be. And to be honest, it's about having a manager. Yeah. Manchester United haven't got a manager. He's not managing because he's not telling him. And you can't tell someone about something if that person believes you're only a stopgap. Yeah. So the whole thing was going. He needs to be told. He needs to be told. He needs a captain to say to him, "What the hell are you doing?" And I think I've said it on here before. I went down, I think on my debut against Notts County, And I went down. It wasn't that bad, but I went down. Maybe just the whole thing was just getting where I'd gone from in playing in front of a maximum of 22,000. All of a sudden, I was playing in front of 42,000 on my debut.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I went down, and Robbo just come up to me and said, "Are you hurt? Are you all right? You're right." I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, get up."
Yeah.
And that kind of, oh God, Brian Robson has said that. I'm getting up.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the whole thing. I don't get it. But we have to say, Wayne, as we know, it's part and parcel of the game.
Yeah.
People think that's being professional. If you're winning, you know, people go, "Oh, that's being professional." It's not. As a man, as any person, never show anybody that you're hurt. Unless you're seriously hurt. And that person done that in a way might feel bad, but don't ever show anybody you're hurt by rolling around. You're a fantastic footballer. Get up, smile, like Roy, like Wayne Rooney would do, and like Eric would do. 99 times out of 100. But you know, we all know those three, that one time was always explosive.
Yeah.
Because it was serious.
Yeah, absolutely. And Rooney himself, he had a few of those. Patrick makes a comment about on Bruno. He's not advocating softy antics because he's old school, but we're always told that we're too nice and not streetwise enough. Is he trying to influence refs in his own way? Yeah, I think that's the problem. He probably is trying to do that. But do you want to see that? There's now a video that tells you if a player, if a player's acting or not. Do you know what I mean? It's like it shouldn't be stuff like that. I don't.
It should be, but what's happened to self-respect? Like those words, self-respect.
Yeah.
So when he walks out with his family around Manchester, and everyone's going, "Oh, they're seeing Fernandes," and all of a sudden, in the back of someone's mind, going, "Cool, he can half dive around." He goes in a shopping centre. People are scared to go close with their trolleys in case he falls over. You know, he's put himself in that the way he is. What about your own personal self? That must come into your mind, Wayne, about how you're foreseen by people, rough and tough. As people, when we talk about Rooney, all those three you mentioned, but you look at him, you go, you don't know. It's not right. And you're not influencing referees, because referees are no different to me and you. They watch TV, they look at social media, and they just hear what other people say. Oh. Paul Tierney, yeah, cool. Bruno Fernandes, he was trying to do this and do that. In his own mind, he's human. He's going, yeah, I know. He tried to pull the wool over my eyes. He's trying to con me.
Yeah.
But he's got to play a different game on 90 minutes. But in life, you're not going to do, you think the same as everyone else. So is he making a difference to the referee's head? No, all he's doing is bringing on what the referee knows already.
Patrick makes a comment just following on from that. I remember Spurs player doing it to Martial and getting him sent off, and they won 6-1. It's the gamesmanship. I mean, we can all sit here and say, talk about it. And you're right, Patrick. You're right. Gamesmanship isn't just Bruno Fernandes. It's not just him at United. There are a few like that, but at the moment, he's definitely the most prominent. And I just think, in terms of, we've got a massive attitude shift that needs to happen at the club, and that's one of the things that needs to happen for United to move forward, because they're not going to. You don't really see that happening at City, to be fair. Not really Liverpool either. Words I don't want to say.
But the major thing, Wayne, I know you want to move on to the next bit. The major thing is that you look at the way City are, their position in the league, and the way they perform into United. That's the difference. The reason why United and all the things, the stories that are allegedly coming out and saying all this, is because the club is in a bad place at the moment. And that's what it boils down to. When you're in that mode of winning things and on the verge of winning things are close for you to go and grab, nothing ever comes out.
It's the same principle when we're talking about lack of accountability for all this sort of stuff when we've criticised Maguire before. And before we move on, I'm going to praise Maguire because yesterday scored a nice header, and the celebration was dedicated to a nil lad as well that he's been befriended on social media, which was nice to see. And he won. I mean, we've been very critical of him on this podcast. By the way, I'm with you. I thought Lindelof, another player that I've been critical of before, was absolutely magnificent yesterday. All the things that you said, I'm completely in agreement with. But Maguire, it went right yesterday, scored, great, and we'll move on. That's what you want to see. That's the standard that you want to see week in, week out. Right, Atletico Madrid. I want to talk first and foremost about your memories of playing against them. Different times, obviously, very different times. Although Paulo Futre Kind of like the centre forward that, not exactly like Luis Suarez at all, but that kind of wildfire centre forward that you're going to get, like you don't know what to expect against them. And obviously, your memories are, it's a different stadium now. Everything's sort of moved on. The game's moved on as it has. But what were your memories of playing in that game? That tie, really, because it was a difficult one.
It was, but it's my first experience of, not the first game, but just of European football, because I never played European football, club football, until I signed for United. Because the opportunity that happened, I qualified for Europe as a QPR player, but we wasn't allowed to play in Europe at that given time.
Yeah.
But then to go and play there, and you're sitting there, when I talk about European football, I always say that the game, you can be comfortable for 85 minutes, and all of a sudden, the whole thing can change. That was European football as it used to be. You couldn't write a script for it because you didn't know what's going to happen, so you couldn't really plan it. But that Atletico Madrid game was all about that, and it was about Paulo Futre. You didn't have to mention his name because I want to mention him, and because what a wonderful player he was. And if it wasn't for injuries, big, no different to him. To I've forgotten his name as well. There was another player as well that was in my head. I was going to say as well, but injuries stopped him being talked about as a great. You got to West Ham, still done okay, but he wasn't what he was. He was just incredible. His quickness of feet, his movement. He was like a European version of Maradona, wasn't he? The way
he was brilliant. He was brilliant.
Absolutely incredible. The way he played, and it was, we got turned over in the last few minutes, and the boss he went mad, but very in a constructive way, just telling us exactly what it was everything about it, telling us about European football, and it was all a build. It was all a build up for him as well to leading towards '99.
Yeah,
as such in the way he's thinking. He was always building, and we were the ones who had to go in there just to try and, just build that little bit along the way for him. And it was always going to, excuse me, it was always going to be difficult, always. Yeah. And that's my lesson in Europe.
It's funny you mentioned that, because I remember, obviously, everyone who watches this who's a big United fan, who's around my age, will remember all this sort of talk about Fergie having that, like a albatross of the European Cup. But it's easy to forget that when he came to United, he'd obviously got the Cup Winners' Cup win behind him at Aberdeen, so he had the European pedigree that United didn't have. So it was you lot having to live up to him in those early days, right? He had that pedigree, and obviously having won it in 91 as well, he'd sort of proven himself in Europe.
Yeah, but he done it against the odds with Aberdeen. So the thing about the boss is that every time when he comes to Manchester United, he knew himself, but he had to go and win. He had to go and do that. He just suddenly, I'm taking a massive punt here, but I don't think I'm far wrong. He knew what was expected of him when he came to Manchester United. The same as he believed that every player who played for Manchester United under him knew what was expected of them. Yeah. And that's why, excuse me, I've got a frog in my throat. That's why every player who wanted, the players who done it right, stayed there and done it more than once. And the reason why they were there for that length of time. Yeah. And the moment it wasn't, they were gone. Simple as that. And you knew it in the dressing room. You knew when players were moving on. You just knew it. The player knew it himself, so they conducted themselves in a way they knew it's going to happen. But the boss set himself up. Europe was the key. He knew it was always going to be difficult because of the rulings with with the foreigners having to play the rulings, and it was always going to be difficult. You couldn't play the same team from Saturday. During my time, we had to make big changes. The biggest call he made was the game at the Nou Camp. Yeah. During my time, he had to make that call, bringing in Gary Walsh, just to try another way of doing it. It didn't work out. But at the end of the day, United got what they deserved in the end, was that first Champions League. But it wasn't just a around, what didn't just happen, it was made to happen, and the way he built it. And he built his team to get there at that given time with a breed of young players coming through who were so hungry that they wanted to go and do it again and again and again. And that's why United, under Sir Alex, was always competitive after 99.
Yeah. For those days. Those days. This week, Atletico Madrid, very different to as they were then, but obviously a lot of continental flair in the team. A bit of a mixed bag this season. They're in fifth. They don't seem to have the same defensive discipline as Simeone's. His classic kind of approach.
Sorry, Wayne, to stop you there, but is that the sign of the times that we're seeing here as well? Because he managed, and he was always like bang, bang. He was always at the players, and he's finding maybe in Spain now as well and everywhere is that the way you have to relate as a manager now, a coach, whatever you call yourself, to players now compared to that back four he had during that time. He could virtually take them aside and say, you defended very badly, boys. I'm going to take you outside and now I'm going to whip you because you was that bad. And they'll go, yes, boss, we're bad and we'll accept a whipping. And that's the difference. That's the difference now, isn't it?
Possibly it could be that because, every when a generation moves on and you've got to find different ways of motivating, maybe that's where we are with Simeone at the moment. And you look, they lost all the games in December. The recent form's picked up, but they're still winning one, losing one. They lost 3 in the Champions League group. They had the first clean sheet for a while at the weekend, and a 3-0 win. But you look at the team, likely a reunion with Luis Suarez, which is going to be fun and games. But they've got Griezmann hasn't played since December. The Carrasco, I think, is suspended. Kuna and Lemar look like they're going to be doubtful for the game as well. It's one of those where you think, it's a good time to play him, but when the game kicks off, it's still going to be Atletico Madrid against Manchester United, and the players that sort of equalising factor of thinking, all the big names are gone, it sort of moves away, doesn't it? And it just becomes its own thing.
Yeah, given the way that United have been, you have to say is that not really sure what you're going to get. You talk about who's going to be out for Atletico. You still think to yourself, what United team is going to turn up? How they're going to do with it? Atletico play a game where they don't really want the ball a lot. It's not the way they play, but that might be different because Griezmann's not about at the moment. He might not be available. So on the counter is always a problem, but you just don't know. So you say to yourself, United should get a lot of the ball because they don't really play that way. But you just know that isn't going to happen. You know that Atletico with the players they've got are going to have the ball more than Manchester.
They're still better, even if they don't want the ball. They're still better at keeping it than what we are.
Because of the personnel. It's not about the way United set up or anything like that. It's about the personnel. They haven't got the players who can play that way, Manchester United. So we'll have to wait and see what happens in that one. But it's just that occasion. You just know the way they play Atletico. It's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
It's so difficult to score a goal. Really difficult. It's going to be a difficult game more difficult for Ronaldo because he's going to try his hardest to reminisce because of his Real Madrid days. That means that he's going to be taking a lot on his shoulders to say, look, I'm that. And the problem is those players are going to be up against him. And a lot of those players, the players he'll be up against, mostly watched him on TV in Spain when he's playing. So that occasion's going to be built around him.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a really, really difficult game for him, as most games for Manchester United are for him.
Yeah.
For Ronaldo, just by the way that United set up and the way they play.
Yeah, it will be. It's been funny, to see the recent weeks where a lot of opponents are getting on his back when he's not been doing very well. Obviously, he had a few soos from the Brighton fans, and then they were a bit quiet after he scored. But obviously, in recent weeks, he's had it a little bit difficult, and they were all at it again yesterday. Obviously, he should have probably done better with that chance, but the conditions might have.
It was just behind him as well, by the way. He's had to drag it from behind. He got good contact in the end, really. So you have to put it down to a good save.
It was a good save, yeah. From a goalkeeper that looks like sometimes the ball would go through him because he's that lightweight. Before we move on, nice comment from Mark. Mark, good morning. Mark will be joining us on the channel at some point in the near future as one of our new hosts. Look forward to that. Another comment from Patrick. My heart says we've got a chance because Atletico are in the same form as last year. My head says we're not streetwise in tight games against an experienced Champions League side. And yeah, that's perfectly summed up. Patrick should come on and talk instead of us because I think that was very neatly summed up. That's our concerns in a nutshell. One guy who should be streetwise is Roy Hodgson. He's been around. He's seen everything. He's now coach of Watford. They won their first game since defeating us in November at the weekend. They won 1-0 against Aston Villa. Dennis, who tore us to bits in that game, scored the goal. Now, Roy Hodgson has masterminded some great escapes in the past, Paul. Is this the start of another one? It's definitely one because he's now in and because they've won the first game. It's one that we would have had to treat having to take a little bit more seriously. And a lot of these players, they were humiliated by Watford. They've got to. We're talking about what are these things that are going to make the players stand up and show a little bit of self-respect. This has got to be one. I know it's only Watford, but they've got to come out and put a good performance on.
They have. A lot of them owe it to themselves after what happened at Vicarage Road, because it was, excuse me again, because it was poor what happened at Vicarage Road.
Yeah.
The performance and everything was poor, so a lot of them owe themselves to performance against Watford. And it is going to be so difficult against Watford now that Roy's there, to be perfectly honest. And I watched a lot of these games, a lot of them behind closed doors when he was at Palace, and you just see the way they played, and they made it so difficult for people. And the most important thing for the game against Watford, if there's a goal, the first goal that's scored, it has to go to Manchester United, because if they don't score that first goal, there's going to be a big problem, because they will make it so difficult. He did it at Crystal Palace against everything. It was everything. You could talk about monetary, everything about it, but he may just, I don't know how he does it, Roy, him and Ray Lewington, but they make players feel good about themselves in the manner in which they do their jobs and the way they organise. So no one is down, no United fan can be seriously, who's in a moment ago, we've only got Watford. They know they've got a difficult game. Watford pre-Roy would have been not a problem. Would have been not a problem. They would have turned around and got their revenge after that poor performance in the at Vicarage Road. But not now. Not that he's turned up there. Those players who go out there will know their jobs. As simple as that. So he will turn around some kind of makeshift squad of players who don't really know each other, because that's their mercenaries. That's what's been happening in Watford at Watford for so many years now. What's gone on now is embarrassing. But he will turn them around. Otherwise, he would never have taken that job on. It's as simple as that. So they've got to start right and not be thinking all of a sudden because they've won a big game in Man United fans' heads. A big game against Leeds at Ellen Road as well. To think that that's their seat, that's that over. That's all right now. Everything's going to be easy, because Watford ain't going to be easy. No game is easy now. There isn't. Yeah. They're not. We're nowhere near that to be thinking that this is an easy one. This is a guaranteed 3 points.
Yeah, United are definitely in that position at the moment because the games are running out and the top 4 space has got to. They've got to just accumulate the points in whatever way they can. And yeah, they do owe Watford something. They definitely do, but they owe it to themselves as well.
Yeah,
and I think that's the problem is that I don't know. You still don't know about these players, and the problem is that we're stuck with them until the end of the season at least. And the manager, I mean, look, you said it yesterday about Leeds. There was a definite commitment there, and if there's something that we can say in the recent games, the commitment has been there. It's whether or not they're good enough to do it. So right, they'll try against Watford, whereas they didn't seem to be last time. We'll see what the difference is, but yeah, nice to talk about a week when we've had a couple of wins at least. That's let's hope that we're doing that next week.
We call that a rarity.
Yeah, definitely this season. I'm trying to think maybe 1 or 2 that's happened already this season. Don't even know if we've been that blessed, but yeah, it was good to have one this week at least. Yeah, if you're watching on the YouTube, give us a like and subscribe to the channel. Post comments in the comment section, even if you're watching back as well. And obviously, if you listen on the audio platform, please be sure to give us a review. and a subscription on the platform you're listening on. We'll be back next week to talk about the trip to Madrid and the game against Tricky Roy's Watford. Until then, stay safe in this terrible weather, which looks like behind Paul. I've been watching it throughout the episode. It looks fairly safe at Paul's end, but it's now picking up, so I'm not worried about it.
I've heard stuff out there moving, by the way.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest, though, we went through that stage of, we had a whole day about talking about everywhere you went on the news. It was just everything to bed, just talk about the wins. We haven't talked about the win today. The win today, in a moment in time, is no different to the other day.
Yeah.
And I'm just looking at stuff moving out. I'm going to have to go outside.
Yeah, well, pray for Paul, everyone, and we'll be back next week. Hopefully Paul will be here as well. If not, he might have been blown up to me in Manchester, so we can do it together. But if not, back next week. Stay safe, guys.